Look at her arms. One passenger laughed as he climbed into the old yellow tricycle. She looks stronger than all of us. Another mocked. Amara simply smiled. Good morning. Where are you going? She asked calmly. The men laughed again. You're not angry? She shook her head. Your laughter won't pay my mother's hospital bills. Just then, a handsome billionaire sitting inside a nearby Rolls-Royce watched everything. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Turning to his driver, he quietly said, Everyone is laughing at her. But all I see is a woman with the strongest heart I've ever seen. If you love emotional stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Now, let's begin this unforgettable story. The first rays of the morning sun had barely touched the crowded streets of Lagos when Amara Okafor tightened the faded scarf around her head and stepped outside her small one-room apartment. The neighborhood was already awake. Children chased one another through the narrow, dusty streets. Women balanced bowls of tomatoes on their heads while calling out prices. Motorcycles buzzed past like angry bees. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crowed as though it had forgotten the city never truly slept. Amara smiled faintly. Another day, another battle. She walked toward the old yellow tricycle parked outside the compound. Its once bright paint had faded, and patches of rust covered parts of its body. One headlight worked only when it wanted to, and every morning she whispered the same prayer before turning the ignition. Please, just don't embarrass me today. The engine coughed. It shook, then finally roared to life. She laughed. Thank you, God. Behind her, the door creaked open. Her younger brother, David, rushed outside wearing his school uniform. Sister. Amara turned. The 12-year-old wrapped his arms around her waist. I'll pass my exams today, he said proudly. I know you will. You'll come home early? I'll try. You promised. She gently rubbed his hair. I know. Another little voice came from inside. Mama is awake. Amara immediately hurried back inside. The room was tiny. One old bed stood against the wall. A worn-out sofa served as another bed for her brothers. The air smelled faintly of medicine. Her mother, Grace Okafor, lay weakly beneath a thin blanket. Years of kidney disease had stolen her strength. Even smiling seemed difficult. My daughter, Grace whispered. Amara knelt beside her. How are you feeling this morning? Grace forced a smile. I've been better. Amara reached for the medicine bottle. Only 2 tablets remained. Her smile faded. The hospital bill was already more than she could imagine paying. Every day she drove longer. Every day she slept less. Still, it wasn't enough. Grace noticed her expression. Don't worry about me. I always will. You work too hard. I have to. You deserve a better life. Amara held her mother's hand. My better life is keeping all of you alive. Tears filled Grace's eyes. You've become both father and mother to these boys. Amara swallowed the lump in her throat. After their father died 5 years earlier in a construction accident, everything had changed overnight. She had abandoned her dream of becoming a professional athlete. The local gym that once admired her incredible strength had offered opportunities to compete. Instead, she sold the little jewelry she owned, borrowed money, bought an old second-hand tricycle. People laughed the first day they saw her driving it. Some still laugh today, but laughter never paid hospital bills. Hard work did. She kissed her mother's forehead. I'll bring your medicine this evening. Grace looked away quietly. Both of them knew there wasn't enough money. Still, neither wanted to say it aloud. Outside, Amara climbed into the driver's seat. Her powerful hands gripped the handlebars with practiced ease. Years of lifting heavy loads and pushing broken vehicles had sculpted her into an exceptionally muscular woman. Her broad shoulders, defined arms, and strong frame often made strangers stop and stare. Some admired her. Most mocked her. She ignored them all. As she drove toward the busy roads, the city came alive around her. The familiar cries of traders echoed through the air. Kiki, Kiki, fresh oranges, hot akara. Lagos moved fast. If you slowed down, it left you behind. Her first passengers climbed in near a bus stop. 3 young men. The moment they saw her, they burst into laughter. "See this woman. Look at those muscles. I think she's stronger than all of us." Another flexed his skinny arm dramatically. "Madam, are you sure you're not a wrestler?" The others laughed harder. One even took out his phone to record her. Amara simply adjusted the rearview mirror. "Where are you going?" They exchanged surprised looks. "Wetin? She no vex." One shrugged. "Yaba, get in." Throughout the ride, they continued making jokes. "Madam, if engine spoil, you fit carry this kiki for head." Another added, "You no need husband. Now you go protect am." They laughed again. Amara smiled politely. When they arrived, they paid and walked away still laughing. She whispered to herself, "One day, people will see more than these muscles." Hours passed. Passenger after passenger. Trip after trip. The scorching afternoon sun baked the roads until heat shimmered above the asphalt. Sweat soaked her clothes. Her arms ached. Her stomach growled. She had skipped breakfast to save money. Near a market, an elderly woman carrying heavy bags struggled to wave her down. Amara stopped immediately. "Mother, let me help you." She climbed down, lifted every heavy bag effortlessly, and placed them inside the tricycle. The old woman stared. "My daughter, you're very strong." Amara laughed. "So they keep telling me." When they reached the woman's destination, the elderly passenger searched inside her wrapper. "My child." She looked embarrassed. "I don't have enough money." Amara smiled warmly. "It's all right." "No, it really is." She handed the old woman one of the bags. "You can use the money to buy food." The old woman's eyes filled with tears. "God will bless you." Amara simply nodded before driving away. Kindness cost nothing, even when everything else did. By late afternoon, dark clouds gathered unexpectedly. A light rain began to fall. The roads became muddy. Traffic stretched endlessly. Then, her engine sputtered. "No!" The tricycle jerked violently, then stopped completely. Amara tried again. Nothing. Again. Silence. She sighed deeply. "Not today." Cars behind her immediately began blasting their horns. Drivers shouted angrily. "Move! What's wrong with you? Carry that thing away." She climbed down into the rain. Her clothes quickly became soaked. She pushed with all her strength. The heavy tricycle barely moved. Again. Again. Her powerful muscles strained beneath the effort. Still, the old machine refused to cooperate. People watched. Some laughed. Some recorded videos. Nobody offered to help. Amara gritted her teeth. "I can do this." She leaned harder against the vehicle. Slowly, it began to roll. A few meters ahead, traffic had come to a complete stop. At the front of the line sat a gleaming black Rolls-Royce Phantom, polished so perfectly that raindrops slid off like tiny pearls. Inside the luxurious car, Adrian Cole glanced up from the business documents in his lap after hearing the endless chorus of impatient horns. "What is causing this traffic?" he asked calmly. His driver looked ahead through the windshield. "It seems a tricycle has broken down, sir." Adrian sighed. "I see." He casually looked out the window. Then, his eyes froze. In the middle of the rain stood a woman. Her soaked clothes clung to her powerful frame as she pushed the heavy tricycle alone. Her face showed exhaustion. Her hands trembled. Yet she refused to give up. People mocked her. No one helped her. Still, she kept pushing. Adrian slowly lowered the document in his hands. For reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't look away. Something about her determination reached a place in his heart that had been empty for years. And for the first time in a very long time, the billionaire forgot about meetings, contracts, and billions of naira. He could only watch the extraordinary woman struggling alone in the rain. He had no idea that this single moment was about to change both of their lives forever. The image refused to leave Adrian Cole's mind. It had been 3 days since the rainstorm brought traffic to a standstill on one of Lagos' busiest roads. Yet every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same woman. A woman with powerful arms pushing an old yellow tricycle through the pouring rain. A woman who struggled alone while dozens of people laughed and recorded videos instead of helping. A woman who never begged, who never cried, who simply kept pushing. Adrian sat behind the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office on the top floor of Cole Holdings Tower. From there, the entire city stretched beneath him. Gleaming skyscrapers, busy highways, expensive hotels, and luxury homes. Everything he had dreamed of as a poor boy had become reality. Yet, despite all the success surrounding him, he felt strangely empty. His assistant, Samuel, entered the office carrying a stack of files. "Good morning, sir." Adrian didn't answer immediately. He was staring out the window. "Sir." Your meeting with the board begins in 10 minutes. Adrian nodded absent-mindedly. "Cancel it." Samuel blinked. "Cancel the board meeting? Reschedule it." Samuel had worked for Adrian for 8 years. In all that time, Adrian had never postponed a board meeting without a serious reason. "Is everything all right, sir?" Adrian turned from the window. "Samuel." "Yes, sir." "Find the woman." Samuel frowned. "What woman?" "The tricycle driver." Silence filled the office. "The muscular woman whose tricycle broke down 3 days ago." Samuel looked completely confused. "Sir, that's all the information you have?" Adrian smiled faintly. "That's all I need." Samuel hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I'll find her." As the assistant left, Adrian leaned back in his chair. He didn't even know her name. Yet something inside him insisted he had to see her again. Later that evening, Adrian drove alone to his mother's mansion in Victoria Island. The sprawling white estate stood behind towering gates, with perfectly trimmed gardens and fountains that sparkled under golden lights. Inside, Mrs. Beatrice Cole was hosting another elegant dinner. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead. Servants moved silently between guests carrying expensive meals. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt cold. The moment Adrian entered, his mother smiled brightly. "My son." She kissed his cheek. "You came." "I said I would." She linked her arm through his. "I have someone I'd like you to meet." Adrian already knew what was coming. Every family dinner ended the same way. Marriage, rich families, business alliances, beautiful women. As expected, his mother led him toward a glamorous woman dressed in a sparkling designer gown. "Adrian, this is Ella Benson." Ella smiled confidently. "I've heard so much about you." Adrian forced a polite smile. "It's nice to meet you." Ella extended her perfectly manicured hand. "I've admired your achievements for years." Adrian shook her hand briefly. Mrs. Cole beamed. "You two would make such a beautiful couple." Adrian sighed quietly. "Mother." "What?" "I'm not interested." Mrs. Cole's smile disappeared. "You haven't even spoken to her." "I've spoken enough." Ella laughed awkwardly. "I don't mind taking things slowly." Adrian looked directly at her. "Miss Benson." "Yes. If I lost everything tomorrow, my company, my money, my houses, my cars, would you still want to marry me?" The room became unusually quiet. Ella stared at him, then laughed. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one." She shifted uncomfortably. "Well, you're Adrian Cole. But imagine I wasn't." She forced another smile. "I don't think that's possible." Adrian nodded. "Exactly." Without another word, he walked away. Mrs. Cole hurried after him. "Adrian." He stopped near the balcony overlooking the city lights. His mother lowered her voice. "Why do you always embarrass me?" "I'm not trying to." "Then why can't you choose a proper wife?" "A proper wife?" "A woman from a respectable family." "A wealthy family, you mean?" "Yes." Adrian sighed. "Money doesn't make someone respectable." Mrs. Cole folded her arms. "Poor people marry for survival. Wealthy people marry for power." "I don't want either." His mother stared at him. "Then what do you want?" Adrian looked into the distance. "I want someone who would still love me if I owned nothing." Mrs. Cole shook her head. "That kind of woman doesn't exist." Adrian remembered the woman pushing the broken tricycle in the rain. For some reason, he wasn't so sure. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. Instead, he wandered into the study inside his mansion. The walls were lined with books, awards, and framed magazine covers celebrating his success. One photograph caught his attention. It showed him and his late father standing in front of the tiny roadside shop where they once sold spare car parts. His father had been wearing worn-out clothes, but he had been smiling. Adrian gently picked up the frame. "I miss you, Dad." His father's words echoed in his memory. "Son, never choose people because they look rich. Choose the ones who stay when life becomes difficult." Adrian smiled sadly. "I've tried. But every relationship had ended the same way. One girlfriend secretly accepted money from reporters to reveal details about his private life. Another stayed only until she secured a luxury apartment. Another became engaged to someone else barely 2 months after they separated. Each betrayal built another wall around his heart, until eventually, he stopped believing genuine love existed. Yet one brief encounter with a hardworking tricycle driver had somehow cracked that wall. He couldn't explain why. Maybe it wasn't love. Maybe it was admiration. Or maybe it was hope. The following afternoon, Samuel returned carrying a small folder. "I found her." Adrian immediately looked up. "You did?" "Yes, sir." He placed the file on the desk. "Her name is Amara Okafor." Adrian opened it. Inside was a simple photograph. No makeup, no expensive clothes, just the same determined eyes he had seen in the rain. Samuel continued. 29 years old. Adrian listened carefully. "She lives in Ajagunal with her sick mother and 2 younger brothers." He turned another page. "She has been driving a tricycle for 5 years. Any criminal record? None. Debts? Only hospital bills." Adrian felt his chest tighten. Samuel continued. "People in her neighborhood describe her as hardworking." Another page. "She often gives free rides to elderly passengers." Another. "She sometimes buys food for homeless children." Another. "She refuses charity." Adrian slowly closed the folder. A smile spread across his face. For the first time in years, it was genuine. Samuel noticed. "I've never seen you smile like that, sir." Adrian stood and walked toward the window. "Neither have I." "So what now?" Adrian turned around. "I'm going to meet her." Samuel frowned. "As Adrian Cole?" Adrian shook his head. "No." "Then how?" A playful smile appeared on Adrian's face. "As an ordinary passenger." He picked up a plain shirt from the back of his chair. No designer suits. No bodyguards. No luxury cars. Just a man riding in a tricycle. Samuel chuckled. "You know she'll have no idea she's driving one of the richest men in Nigeria." Adrian smiled. "That's exactly how I want it." Outside, somewhere on the busy streets of Lagos, Amara continued searching for her next passenger, completely unaware that destiny was about to climb into the back of her old yellow tricycle. And neither of them knew that the journey ahead would change their lives forever. The streets of Lagos were already alive before 8 o'clock. Car horns echoed endlessly. Street vendors called out to passing commuters. The smell of freshly fried akara mixed with the scent of roasted corn drifting through the warm morning air. Amara adjusted the rearview mirror of her old yellow tricycle and whispered her usual prayer. "Lord, thank you for another day. Please let today be better than yesterday." She smiled softly before pulling into the busy road. Her body still ached from pushing the tricycle in the rain 3 days earlier, but she couldn't afford to rest. Hospital bills did not wait. School fees did not wait. Hunger certainly did not wait. She needed every naira she could earn. Across the city, Adrian Cole stood in front of the mirror inside his mansion. For the first time in years, he wasn't wearing one of his tailored Italian suits. Instead, he had on a plain blue t-shirt, faded jeans, simple sneakers, and a black face cap. Even his expensive wristwatch had been replaced with an old leather one. His assistant, Samuel, stared at him in disbelief. "You actually look normal." Adrian laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. Samuel folded his arms. You know, if your mother sees you dressed like this, she'll think you've been kidnapped. Adrian chuckled. Then don't tell her. Samuel handed him a small envelope. Emergency cash. Adrian slipped it into his pocket. No security? No. No driver. I'll take a taxi. Samuel sighed dramatically. If anything happens to you, your mother will blame me. Adrian smiled. I'll be fine. He stepped outside without bodyguards, without luxury cars, and without anyone recognizing the billionaire who appeared on magazine covers almost every month. For the first time in a long while, he felt free. Nearly an hour later, Adrian stood at a crowded bus stop in Yaba. People hurried past without giving him a second glance. Office workers rushed to work. Students laughed together. Market women balanced baskets on their heads. Then he saw it. The familiar old yellow tricycle. Its paint was chipped. The engine rattled noisily, but the woman driving it looked exactly as he remembered. Strong, focused, beautiful in a way no expensive makeup could create. Amara slowed beside the bus stop. Yaba, Suralere, Maryland. Adrian stepped forward. Suralere. She nodded. Hop in. He climbed into the back seat. She didn't even look twice at him. To her, he was simply another passenger. Something about that made Adrian smile. The tricycle pulled away into traffic. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Adrian watched her through the small mirror. She drove confidently, skillfully weaving through traffic without taking unnecessary risks. Unlike many drivers, she never shouted or fought with other motorists. She simply focused on the road. Eventually, Adrian broke the silence. You've been driving for a long time? She glanced briefly into the mirror. 5 years. You enjoy it? She laughed. Nobody enjoys Lagos traffic. Adrian laughed too. Fair enough. But I enjoy being able to feed my family. Her answer caught him off guard. So that's why you drive? My family is my reason for everything. She smiled as she avoided a pothole. My mother is sick. I'm sorry. My brothers are still in school. So you take care of all of them? She nodded. It's what family does. Adrian leaned back quietly. He admired how naturally she said it. No complaints. No bitterness. Only love. After a few moments, Amara asked, What about you? He hesitated. What about me? You don't sound like someone who rides Kiki often. Adrian laughed nervously. What makes you think that? You looked confused when you entered. I was. You almost sat facing the wrong direction. They both laughed. You noticed. I notice everything. Adrian smiled. She was observant. I own a small business, he replied carefully. What kind? Import and export. Technically, it wasn't a lie. Coal Holdings imported and exported products across Africa. Only he left out the part where his company was worth billions of naira. Business must be stressful. It can be. You should rest sometimes. He smiled. Funny. What? People usually tell me to work harder. She shrugged. Money is important. She paused. But peace is more important. Those words lingered in Adrian's heart. Peace. When was the last time he had truly felt peaceful? His life was filled with meetings, contracts, interviews, investors, and endless responsibilities. Yet somehow, riding inside this noisy old tricycle felt more relaxing than sitting inside his luxury Rolls-Royce. As they approached a busy intersection, an elderly blind man stood at the roadside holding a white cane. Cars sped past without stopping. The traffic light turned green. Drivers accelerated. Without hesitation, Amara pulled over. Adrian looked surprised. Aren't you working? I am. She climbed down, carefully took the old man's hand, and slowly helped him cross the road while impatient drivers honked loudly. One man shouted through his window, Move! You're delaying everybody. Amara ignored him. She stayed beside the elderly man until he reached the other side safely. The old man smiled. God bless you, my daughter. She smiled back. Travel safely. She climbed into the tricycle again. Adrian couldn't hide his admiration. You didn't have to do that. I know. You lost time. I'll earn more. What if another passenger gets impatient? She shrugged. If kindness makes someone impatient, that's their problem. Adrian looked away before she could notice the smile spreading across his face. His father had always lived by those same words. Kindness first. Everything else later. A few minutes later, they stopped at a roadside food stall because traffic had become almost impossible. Amara bought a bottle of water. As she opened it, she noticed a little girl sitting nearby. The child couldn't have been older than 6. Her clothes were torn. Her eyes were fixed on the food being sold. Without saying anything, Amara walked over. She bought a plate of rice and beans, then handed it to the little girl. The child's eyes widened. For me, Amara nodded. Eat before it gets cold. The little girl smiled so brightly that it melted Adrian's heart. Thank you, Auntie. Amara simply waved and returned to her tricycle as though she had done nothing extraordinary. Adrian stared at her. He had attended charity galas worth hundreds of millions of naira. He had signed oversized donation checks in front of television cameras. Yet somehow, this quiet act of kindness felt more meaningful than all of them. She wasn't helping people for applause. She wasn't helping them because anyone was watching. She helped because it was who she was. Eventually, they arrived in Muscular. How much? Adrian asked. 3,000 naira. He handed her 10,000. She counted the money. Sir. Yes. You gave me too much. Keep the change. She immediately shook her head. No. It's all right. It isn't. She counted out 7,000 naira and stretched it toward him. You paid for one trip, not 4. Adrian looked at her in amazement. Consider it a tip. She smiled politely. I appreciate it. But I didn't earn it. He slowly accepted the change. In all his years of wealth, no one had ever refused extra money so sincerely. He climbed out of the tricycle. Before driving away, Amara smiled. Take care of yourself. You too. The tricycle disappeared into the busy Lagos traffic. Adrian stood there watching until it was completely out of sight. Then he looked down at the 7,000 naira still in his hand. A woman struggling to survive had refused money she didn't believe she had earned. At that very moment, Adrian realized something that both excited and frightened him. He wasn't simply impressed by Amara anymore. Day by day, moment by moment, he was falling in love with the extraordinary woman behind the wheel of an old yellow tricycle. The following morning, Adrian woke before his alarm. That alone surprised him. For years, his mornings had followed the same routine: emails, business reports, conference calls, meetings with investors, and endless decisions that affected thousands of employees. His life had become so predictable that even weekends felt like work. But today was different. As he stood by the window of his mansion overlooking the city, his thoughts weren't on billionaire contracts. They were on a woman driving an old yellow tricycle. He smiled to himself. What is happening to me? He had only spoken to Amara once. Yet her laughter, her honesty, and her quiet kindness lingered in his heart. The way she had stopped to help a blind man. The way she had bought food for a hungry little girl without expecting praise. The way she had returned his change because she believed she hadn't earned it. None of it felt ordinary. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Later that morning, Adrian once again dressed in plain clothes. Samuel watched him with amusement. So, you're going back? Adrian slipped on his old sneakers. I have some errands. Samuel raised an eyebrow. Errands named Amara? Adrian laughed. You talk too much. I've worked for you for 8 years, sir. I know that smile. What smile? The one you're trying to hide. Adrian shook his head, trying not to grin. I'm only taking another ride. Samuel chuckled. If you say so. At the same bus stop in Yaba, Adrian waited patiently. People rushed past him, eager to reach work before the morning traffic worsened. After several minutes, he heard the familiar sound of a rattling engine. The old yellow tricycle appeared. Amara slowed to a stop. Muscular, Acacia, Maryland. She noticed him immediately. "Oh, you're the businessman." Adrian smiled. "You remembered me?" She shrugged playfully. "You almost sat the wrong way the last time. That's not easy to forget." Both of them laughed. "Where to today?" she asked. "Ikeja. Hop in." As she pulled into traffic, the morning sun bathed the busy streets in a warm golden glow. For a few moments they simply watched the city wake up. Then Amara spoke. "How's your business?" "It's improving. I'm glad." "What about your mother?" She looked surprised that he remembered. "She's the same." "I'm sorry." She gave a small smile. "We keep praying. I hope she gets better." "So do I." Her voice carried both hope and exhaustion. Adrian wished he could tell her that money wasn't a problem for him, that he could pay every hospital bill without thinking twice. But he knew that if he revealed who he really was now, everything between them might change. He wanted her to know him first, not his wealth. As they approached a busy junction, a loud argument erupted ahead. A fruit seller had accidentally spilled her basket into the road. Dozens of oranges rolled across the street. Drivers shouted angrily. Some simply drove over the fruit. The elderly woman stood helplessly, trying to gather what remained. Without hesitation, Amara parked her tricycle. "I'll be back." She hurried toward the woman. Adrian climbed out to watch. Together, they picked oranges off the road while impatient motorists blasted their horns. One driver rolled down his window. "Leave her. You'll be late." Amara ignored him. She continued collecting the fruit until every last orange had been saved. The old woman's hands trembled. "My daughter." "Thank you." Amara smiled. "You would have done the same for me." The woman shook her head. "People don't stop anymore." Amara gently squeezed her shoulder. "Some of us still do." Adrian felt something stir inside him. The world had taught him that kindness was rare. Amara proved it still existed. Back inside the tricycle, Adrian couldn't stop smiling. "You help everyone." She laughed softly. "I don't help everyone. It feels like you do." She kept her eyes on the road. "When my father was alive, he used to say something." "What did he say?" "If you walk past someone who needs help when you're able to help, you've become poorer inside, even if your pocket is full." Adrian looked out the window. His late father had said something similar many years ago. For a brief moment, it felt as though fate had placed Amara in his path for a reason. Around noon, the heat became unbearable. Traffic slowed to a crawl. Amara parked beneath the shade of a large tree. "I'm taking a 5-minute break," she said. "You can wait if you don't mind." "I don't mind." She reached into a small lunch container. Inside were only 2 pieces of boiled yam and a little pepper sauce. Before she could eat, 3 barefoot children wandered toward the tricycle. Their eyes stayed fixed on the food. Without hesitation, Amara smiled. "Come here." The children approached shyly. She divided the yam into 4 pieces. 1 for herself, 1 each for the 3 children. Adrian stared in disbelief. "That's your lunch." She smiled. "Now it's our lunch." One little boy grinned from ear to ear. "Thank you, Auntie." As the children walked away happily, Adrian quietly looked at the untouched bottle of expensive mineral water he had bought earlier. He suddenly felt ashamed. He had everything. She had almost nothing. Yet somehow, she gave more than he did. The rest of the journey passed in easy conversation. They spoke about childhood dreams, favorite foods, the chaos of Lagos traffic. They laughed more than either of them expected. For the first time in years, Adrian wasn't thinking about profits or shareholders. He was simply enjoying someone's company. When they finally reached Ikeja, he stepped out reluctantly. "How much?" 3,000 naira. He paid the exact fare this time. She smiled knowingly. "No extra today?" "I remembered you don't like that." She laughed. "You're learning. I have a good teacher." For the first time, Amara blushed. It was only for a second, but Adrian noticed. "So," he said carefully, "maybe I'll see you again." She shrugged casually. "Lagos is a small city." He laughed. "It definitely isn't." "Then maybe fate will help." She started the engine. Before driving away, she looked at him through the mirror. Businessman. Yes. Don't work too hard. He smiled warmly. I'll try. She drove away, disappearing into the afternoon traffic once more. That evening, Adrian returned to his mansion. His mother was waiting in the sitting room. You've been disappearing a lot lately. I've been busy. Too busy to answer my calls? I needed some time. Mrs. Cole studied her son carefully. There is someone, isn't there? Adrian paused. He hadn't intended to tell anyone, but he couldn't lie. There might be. Her face brightened. Oh, wonderful. Which family is she from? Adrian smiled quietly. You wouldn't know her. What does her father do? Adrian's smile faded slightly. He's gone. Mrs. Cole's expression softened. And her mother? She's ill. What does the young woman do? Adrian looked directly into his mother's eyes. She drives a tricycle. The room fell silent. Mrs. Cole stared at him, convinced she had heard wrong. A what? A tricycle driver. Her teacup slipped from her hand and shattered against the polished marble floor. The sound echoed through the mansion. Adrian knew at that moment that the greatest obstacle to his growing love would not be money. It would be his own family. The sound of the broken teacup echoed through the mansion long after the servants had cleaned the shattered pieces from the marble floor. Mrs. Beatrice Cole remained frozen in her chair, staring at her son as though he had just announced the end of the world. A tricycle driver? She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian nodded calmly. Yes. She laughed, but there was no amusement in it. This isn't funny. I'm not joking. She slowly stood up. Adrian, you're the CEO of Cole Holdings, one of the richest men in Nigeria. Your name appears in business magazines around the world. I know. And you're telling me you've fallen for a woman who drives a kiki on the streets of Lagos? Adrian looked directly into her eyes. I didn't say I'd fallen for her. Mrs. Cole folded her arms. But you have. He remained silent. That silence answered the question. His mother sighed heavily. This is just sympathy. It isn't. You're feeling sorry for her because she's struggling. Adrian shook his head. If it were pity, I would have forgotten her after one day. Then what is it? He smiled softly. She reminds me that the world still has good people. Mrs. Cole looked away. My son, good people don't always make good wives. And rich women don't always make good wives either. She had no answer. Instead, she walked toward the window. I've spent years protecting this family. I know. I won't watch you throw your future away. Without another word, she left the room. Adrian stood quietly. He had expected resistance, but he never imagined it would begin this soon. The following morning, Amara's day began before sunrise. She carefully prepared a small bowl of pap for her mother before waking her younger brothers. David, you'll miss your school bus. I'm awake, David mumbled sleepily. His younger brother, Daniel, stretched and rubbed his eyes. Sis, are you coming to my football match on Saturday? Amara paused. She wanted to say yes. She always wanted to say yes. But work came first. I'll try. Daniel smiled. You always say that. Her heart sank. I know. After everyone had eaten, she counted the money inside an old tin container. She frowned. It wasn't enough. Not even close. Her mother's next hospital appointment was only 2 days away. The doctor had already warned her that delaying treatment would be dangerous. Amara closed the container and whispered a prayer. Lord, please make a way. She grabbed her keys and headed out. At the same time, Adrian stood outside a cafe, pretending to scroll through his phone while secretly waiting for a familiar yellow tricycle. Samuel had offered to send a driver. Adrian refused. He had grown to enjoy blending into the crowd. Soon, the rattling engine he had come to recognize echoed down the street. Amara pulled over. Businessman. He smiled. Driver. She laughed. I think you've become one of my regular customers. I hope that's all right. As long as you pay your fare. He climbed into the back. Before she could drive away, another passenger hurried over. a young pregnant woman carrying 2 heavy bags. "Please, can I join?" "Of course," Amara replied warmly. She climbed down, lifted both bags into the tricycle, then helped the woman climb in safely. Adrian watched quietly. She never acted as though helping people was something extraordinary. To her, kindness seemed as natural as breathing. Halfway through the journey, traffic came to a complete stop. A luxury sports car had broken down in the middle of the road. Its owner, a sharply dressed young man, stood beside it shouting angrily into his phone. "This useless mechanic!" He kicked one of the tires in frustration. Several people gathered to watch. Some laughed. Others recorded videos. Amara slowed her tricycle. She recognized the expression. Helplessness. Without thinking twice, she parked by the roadside. "I'll be back." Adrian smiled to himself. Of course she would stop. She always did. The young man looked up in annoyance. "What?" Amara pointed toward the steering wheel. "Try starting it." "It won't start." "Please." He reluctantly climbed inside and turned the key. The engine coughed. Amara listened carefully. She opened the bonnet. Adrian watched in amazement. "You know cars?" he asked. She smiled. "My father was a mechanic." She tightened a loose battery connection using a small wrench she kept inside the tricycle. "Try again." The man turned the key. The engine roared back to life. His eyes widened. "It works." He hurried over. "How much do I owe you?" Amara shook her head. "Nothing." He looked shocked. "You fixed my car." "I only tightened a cable." He insisted. "Please." She smiled politely. "Buy someone hungry a meal instead." The man stood speechless as she drove away. Adrian couldn't stop staring at her. The more time he spent with Amara, the more extraordinary she became. Meanwhile, inside an elegant beauty salon in Victoria Island, Ella Benson sat flipping through a fashion magazine when she overheard 2 women talking. "Have you noticed Mr. Adrian Cole lately?" "Yes. They say he keeps disappearing without his bodyguards." Ella looked up immediately. "What did you say?" The women smiled awkwardly. "Oh, we just heard a rumor." Ella closed her magazine. Rumors interested her, especially when they involved Adrian. She had no intention of losing the billionaire she believed should become her husband. That afternoon, she quietly instructed one of her personal assistants. "I want to know everywhere Adrian goes." The assistant nodded. "Yes, ma'am. And I mean everywhere." 2 days later, Ella's assistant called excitedly. "I found him." Ella immediately grabbed her handbag. "Where?" "Near Yaba." "What is he doing there?" "You need to see it yourself." Less than 30 minutes later, Ella arrived in her luxury SUV. She stepped out wearing designer sunglasses and expensive heels. Then she saw something she never imagined possible. Adrian, the billionaire every woman in Lagos dreamed of marrying, was sitting inside the back of an old yellow tricycle. He was laughing, actually laughing, not the polite smile he wore at charity events. A genuine laugh. Ella's jaw dropped. What is going on? As the tricycle stopped to drop off another passenger, Ella marched toward it. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement. "Adrian!" He turned. His smile disappeared. "Ella?" She ignored him and looked directly at Amara. "So?" She slowly removed her sunglasses. "You're the reason." Amara looked confused. "I'm sorry." Ella laughed mockingly. "I wondered what could make one of Nigeria's richest men disappear every day." She looked Amara up and down, her eyes filled with contempt. "A tricycle driver?" People nearby began watching. Amara remained calm. "Madam, do you know him?" Ella scoffed. "Know him?" She turned toward Amara again. "Do you even know who he really is?" Adrian's heart skipped a beat. "Ella." But she ignored him. "You're giving rides to one of the richest billionaires in Nigeria." Silence. Amara slowly looked at Adrian. Her eyes widened. "What?" Ella folded her arms triumphantly. "Meet Adrian Cole." She smiled coldly. "The billionaire you've been charging transport fare." The world around Amara seemed to stop. The noisy traffic faded into the background. She looked from Ella to Adrian, searching his face for an explanation. You! Her voice trembled. You're Adrian Cole? Adrian slowly stepped forward. Amara! But before he could say another word, she took one small step backward. Not because she was afraid of his wealth, but because she suddenly realized the man she had trusted hadn't told her the truth. And for the first time since they met, the distance between them felt far greater than the crowded streets of Lagos. Amara stood beside her old yellow tricycle, unable to take her eyes off Adrian. The bustling streets of Yaba continued as though nothing had happened. Buses blared their horns. Street hawkers called out to customers. Motorcycles squeezed through impossible spaces. But to Amara, every sound had faded into silence. Only one sentence echoed in her mind. You're giving rides to one of the richest billionaires in Nigeria. She looked at Adrian again. His simple t-shirt, his faded jeans, the worn sneakers, everything suddenly felt like a disguise. You, she whispered. You're Adrian Cole? Adrian took a slow step toward her. Yes. And you knew I didn't know who you were? I did. So every conversation we had, they were real. Amara's eyes filled with disappointment. Then why didn't you tell me the truth? Adrian lowered his head. Because I was afraid. She frowned. Afraid of what? He sighed deeply. Afraid that once you knew I was Adrian Cole, you would stop seeing me as just another man. Amara stared at him for several seconds. Then she spoke quietly. You should have let me decide that. Those words pierced his heart. I know, Adrian admitted. And I'm sorry. Ella folded her arms with a satisfied smile. I told you she deserved to know. Amara turned toward Ella. Thank you for telling me. Then she looked back at Adrian. I need some time. Without waiting for his reply, she climbed into her tricycle, started the engine, and drove away. Adrian stood in the middle of the roadside, watching until the familiar yellow Kiki disappeared into the sea of Lagos traffic. For the first time in years, his wealth had not opened a door. It had closed one. That evening, Amara sat quietly outside her small apartment, staring at the orange glow of the setting sun. She barely noticed when her younger brother David came to sit beside her. You came home early today. She forced a smile. I did. Did something happen? She hesitated. I met someone. David grinned. A man? She laughed softly. Yes. His eyes widened with excitement. Is he handsome? She rolled her eyes playfully. Very handsome. So what's wrong? Her smile faded. He lied to me. David became serious. What did he lie about? He pretended to be an ordinary businessman. And he isn't? She shook her head. He's one of the richest men in Nigeria. David's mouth fell open. The Adrian Cole? She nodded. Wow. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then David asked the question that had been bothering him. Did he lie because he wanted to hurt you? Amara thought carefully. No. Then why? I don't know. David smiled gently. Maybe he was afraid. She looked at her little brother. That's exactly what he said. David shrugged. People do silly things when they're scared. Amara smiled faintly. Sometimes wisdom came from the youngest voices. Across the city, Adrian sat alone in his office long after every employee had gone home. The lights of Lagos sparkled outside the glass walls, but he barely noticed them. Samuel entered quietly. You haven't gone home. Adrian shook his head. I can't stop thinking about her. Samuel sat across from him. Did she find out? Adrian nodded. Ella told her. Samuel sighed. I was afraid something like that would happen. Adrian rubbed his forehead. I should have told Amara myself. Yes. I've made a mess of everything. Samuel remained silent for a moment before speaking. Sir, may I ask you something? Adrian nodded. When was the last time someone liked you before knowing who you were? Adrian didn't answer, because he couldn't remember. Samuel smiled. Maybe that's why you hid the truth. I suppose. But secrets have a way of becoming heavier the longer we carry them. Adrian looked down. I know. The following afternoon, Adrian decided he couldn't let things end this way. He drove to the neighborhood where Amara lived, leaving his expensive Rolls-Royce several streets away before walking the rest of the distance. Children played football in the dusty road. Women chatted outside small shops. Everyone seemed to know everyone. As he approached Amara's compound, he saw her washing clothes outside. She looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Adrian spoke. "I came to apologize." Amara wiped her hands on a towel. "You already apologized." "I know. But I don't think you understand why I did it." She folded her arms. "I'm listening. I've spent years wondering whether anyone could ever love me without seeing my bank account first." Amara remained silent. "So when I met you," he smiled sadly, "I didn't want to lose the chance to know what it felt like to be treated normally." She looked into his eyes. "I never cared about your money. I know that now. You should have trusted me enough to believe it." "I should have." A long silence followed. Finally, Amara sighed. "I'm still hurt. I understand. But I'm trying." She nodded slowly. "I can see that." Before Adrian could say another word, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside the compound. The door opened. Mrs. Beatrice Cole stepped out, dressed elegantly in an expensive cream-colored outfit. The entire neighborhood fell quiet. Everyone recognized wealth when they saw it. Mrs. Cole walked straight toward Amara. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were cold. "So," she glanced briefly at Adrian before focusing on Amara. "You're the young woman." Amara greeted her respectfully. "Good afternoon, Ma." Mrs. Cole barely acknowledged the greeting. "I'd like to speak with you." Adrian frowned. "Mother." She raised a hand. "This conversation is between her and me." Amara looked at Adrian. "It's all right." Mrs. Cole turned toward a nearby cafe. "Walk with me." A few minutes later, they sat opposite each other in a quiet corner of the cafe. Mrs. Cole placed a neatly wrapped envelope on the table. Amara looked at it. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a bank check. Her eyes widened. The amount was staggering. More money than she had ever imagined holding in her lifetime. Enough to pay every hospital bill. Enough to buy a house. Enough to change her family's future forever. Mrs. Cole spoke calmly. "Take it." Amara slowly looked up. "What for?" "Walk away from my son." Silence filled the cafe. Mrs. Cole continued, her voice firm but controlled. "You seem like a decent young woman. I don't want to insult you." Amara said nothing. "But Adrian belongs in a different world." She gestured toward the check. "Use this to start a business. Buy a better house. Take care of your mother." Then she leaned forward. "And leave my son's life forever." Amara looked down at the check again. She thought of her mother's medicine, her brother's school fees, the leaking roof in their apartment. Every problem this money could solve. Slowly, she closed the envelope, then pushed it back across the table. Mrs. Cole blinked in surprise. "I can't take it." "Why not?" "Because I wasn't raised to sell my heart." Mrs. Cole's expression hardened. "You'll regret this decision." Amara stood. "No, Ma." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "The only thing I'd regret is becoming someone my father wouldn't recognize." She walked out of the cafe with her head held high. Outside, Adrian rushed toward her. "What happened?" Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then, with tears finally escaping her eyes, she whispered, "Your mother was right." Adrian's heart sank. "I don't understand." She managed a heartbreaking smile. "We come from two completely different worlds." She gently touched his hand one last time. "I think it's better if we stop seeing each other." Before Adrian could stop her, Amara climbed into her old yellow tricycle. The engine started. She drove away without looking back. Adrian stood frozen on the roadside, watching the woman he loved disappear into the distance. For the first time in his life, all his billions could not buy the one thing he truly wanted. Amara's heart. For the first time in 5 years, the old yellow tricycle sat quietly outside Amara's apartment long after sunrise. Amara remained seated on the small wooden stool outside her home, staring blankly at the ground. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered Adrian standing helplessly on the roadside as she drove away. She remembered the pain in his eyes. She remembered his mother's words. Adrian belongs in a different world. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget them. Inside the apartment, a violent cough broke the silence. Amara hurried in. Her mother, Grace, struggled to catch her breath. Her face had become pale, and sweat covered her forehead. "Mama!" Grace forced a weak smile. "I'm all right." "No, you're not." Amara touched her mother's forehead. She was burning with fever. David quickly ran to them. "Sis, Mama was coughing all night." Amara's heart tightened. "Why didn't you wake me? You were finally sleeping." Amara helped her mother sit up and handed her some water. Grace took a small sip before another wave of coughing shook her frail body. "I think," Grace whispered, "we should go to the hospital." Amara didn't waste another second. Within minutes, she had carefully helped her mother into the tricycle. David climbed in beside them. The old engine struggled to start. "Please," Amara whispered to the vehicle. "Not today." After 2 attempts, the engine finally came alive. She drove as quickly as she safely could through the busy Lego streets. At the hospital, the doctor examined Grace for nearly an hour. Amara waited outside, pacing nervously. Every passing minute felt like an hour. Finally, the doctor stepped into the hallway. His face was serious. "Are you Grace Okafor's daughter?" "Yes, doctor. I'm afraid her condition has worsened." Amara swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" "The infection has spread, and her kidneys are becoming weaker." She felt her knees weaken. "Can you treat her?" "We can." Relief flooded her face for only a moment. "But," the doctor continued, "she needs surgery as soon as possible." Amara froze. "Surgery?" He nodded. "If we delay much longer, we may lose her." Her heart pounded. "How much will it cost?" The doctor handed her an estimate. Amara looked down. The amount blurred before her eyes. It was more money than she could earn in many months of driving her tricycle. She slowly looked up. "I don't have this kind of money." The doctor's expression softened. "I understand. But time is no longer on your side." He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Please don't wait too long." As he walked away, Amara stood completely still. Her entire world seemed to collapse around her. That evening, she emptied every drawer in the apartment. She counted every naira she had. She searched old handbags, checked beneath the mattress, opened the small tin box where she kept emergency savings. When she finished counting, tears rolled down her cheeks. It still wasn't enough. Not even close. David watched quietly from the corner. "What are we going to do?" Amara wiped her eyes before turning to him. "We'll find a way." "But how?" She forced a smile. "I always do." Deep inside, she had no idea how. The next morning, Amara made a decision. She would work longer than ever before. She would take every passenger she could. Every trip, every fare, every naira mattered now. From before sunrise until long after midnight, she drove without stopping. The scorching afternoon heat burned her skin. Heavy traffic tested her patience. Rain soaked her clothes. Still, she kept driving. Her arms ached. Her back throbbed. Her eyes stung with exhaustion. Whenever passengers complained about the heat or traffic, she simply smiled. She couldn't afford to lose customers. By the 3rd day, she had begun skipping meals. Food could wait. Her mother couldn't. Meanwhile, Adrian tried calling Amara every day. Each call went unanswered. He visited the bus stop where he usually met her. She wasn't there. He waited for hours. Nothing. The following day, he returned again. Still nothing. He asked other tricycle drivers, "Do you know Amara?" Most nodded. "I haven't seen her. Maybe she's working another route." No one knows. As the days passed, worry replaced hope. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. One afternoon, Adrian sat in his office, staring absent-mindedly at his phone. Samuel entered carrying several documents. You haven't signed these. I know. You've barely spoken all week. Adrian looked up. I can't find her. Samuel frowned. Should I investigate? Adrian hesitated, then nodded. Please. Samuel immediately made several phone calls. Within hours, he returned. His face had changed. Sir, what is it? I found out why she's disappeared. Adrian stood instantly. What happened? Her mother is critically ill. Adrian's heart stopped. Samuel continued quietly. Amara has been working almost 20 hours a day trying to raise money for emergency surgery. Adrian closed his eyes. He remembered the check his mother had offered. The check Amara refused. She had chosen her dignity over the easiest solution. Now she was paying the price. Where is she? Samuel handed him an address. One of the hospital staff recognized her. Adrian grabbed his car keys. I'm going. As Adrian arrived at the hospital, he noticed an old yellow tricycle parked outside. Its paint was dirtier than usual. One tire looked dangerously worn. He immediately recognized it. He hurried inside. A nurse pointed toward the waiting area. There. Adrian followed her gaze. His heart broke. Amara was asleep on a hard plastic chair, still wearing her dusty work clothes. Her head rested against the wall. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. One hand still clutched a small notebook filled with figures. Earnings, expenses, hospital bills, and the amount she still needed. She looked exhausted, far beyond ordinary tiredness. This was the exhaustion of someone carrying the weight of an entire family alone. Adrian slowly walked closer. He noticed something else. Her hands. The strong hands that had confidently steered her tricycle through Lagos traffic were now covered with fresh blisters. Her palms were swollen. Tiny cuts lined her fingers. She had worked herself almost to breaking point. Without thinking, Adrian quietly removed his suit jacket and gently draped it over her shoulders. The movement woke her. She opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she looked confused. Then she saw him. Adrian. He smiled sadly. You've lost weight. She tried to sit up. What are you doing here? I came to find you. You shouldn't have. I've been looking everywhere. She looked away. I've been busy. I know. Silence settled between them. Finally, Adrian spoke. Why didn't you tell me? She laughed bitterly. What was I supposed to say? She looked directly into his eyes. Hello, Adrian. The woman your mother doesn't approve of needs money. His heart shattered. You know that's not who I think you are. She smiled weakly. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Before she could respond, the doctor approached. Miss Okafor? She stood quickly. Yes, doctor. We can't delay the surgery any longer. Her face turned pale. I understand. The payment. She lowered her eyes. I'm still trying. The doctor sighed sympathetically. We'll give you one more day. After he walked away, Amara covered her face with her hands. For the first time since her father died, she broke down completely. Quiet tears slipped through her fingers. I don't know what else to do, she whispered. Adrian stood beside her, his own eyes filling with tears. At that moment, he made a silent promise. Whether she accepted it or not, he would not let her carry this burden alone. And before the sun rose the next morning, Adrian had already begun putting a plan into motion. One that would save Grace's life without ever taking away Amara's pride. The next morning, before the first rays of sunlight touched the streets of Lagos, Adrian Cole was already seated inside his office. Unlike every other morning, there were no business reports on his desk, no investment proposals, no meeting schedules. Only one file lay before him. It was Grace Okafor's hospital record. Adrian looked at it for several moments before pressing the intercom. Samuel. His assistant entered almost immediately. Yes, sir. I need your help. Samuel nodded. Anything. Adrian slid the hospital file across the desk. I want Mrs. Grace Okafor's surgery paid for today. Samuel smiled. I'll arrange it. Adrian quickly added. But there's one condition. Samuel paused. What condition? Amara must never know the money came from me. His assistant frowned. Why? Because she'll refuse it. Samuel thought about it for a moment. You're right. I don't want her to feel indebted to me. What should I tell the hospital? Adrian looked out the window. Tell them an anonymous donor wants to help. Samuel smiled. I'll take care of it. Within an hour, the hospital received the full payment. Every hospital bill was settled. The surgery was approved immediately. Not a single member of the Okafor family knew where the money had come from. Later that afternoon, Amara sat nervously outside the operating theater. Her fingers were tightly clasped together as she whispered one prayer after another. David and Daniel sat beside her. Neither of them spoke. The silence felt heavy. After what seemed like forever, the surgeon finally walked toward them. Amara immediately stood. Doctor, he smiled warmly. The surgery was successful. Relief washed over her so suddenly that her legs almost gave way. Thank you, God. David hugged his brother tightly. Daniel wiped tears from his eyes. But, Amara asked, confused, how? The doctor looked surprised. What do you mean? I hadn't finished paying. The doctor smiled. Someone settled every outstanding bill this morning. Amara blinked. Who? I'm sorry. He shook his head. The donor wished to remain anonymous. She stood frozen. Anonymous? Who would spend such a huge amount of money on her family without expecting anything in return? She searched her mind. No answer came. Over the next few weeks, Grace recovered steadily. Color slowly returned to her face. For the first time in months, she laughed with her children again. The small apartment felt alive. One evening, Grace held Amara's hand. My daughter. Yes, Mama? You've been carrying this family for too long. Amara smiled softly. I don't mind. I do. Grace squeezed her hand gently. When God sends someone to help you, don't push them away because you're afraid. Amara knew exactly who her mother was talking about. She looked down. I don't know if he can forgive me. Grace smiled knowingly. If his heart is as good as yours. She paused. He already has. Meanwhile, trouble had found Adrian. Inside the headquarters of Cole Holdings, tension filled the boardroom. Several directors sat around the polished conference table with worried expressions. One of them stood. Sir. Adrian looked up. Our largest international investor has withdrawn. The room became quiet. Another executive spoke. Our company's shares have started falling, and several media outlets are reporting that Cole Holdings is becoming unstable. Samuel handed Adrian another report. It gets worse. Adrian opened it. His expression darkened. One of the company's senior executives had secretly leaked confidential information to a competitor. Within days, the story spread across television, newspapers, and social media. Investors panicked. Employees became fearful. For the first time since founding Cole Holdings, Adrian's empire was shaking. The stress quickly began to affect him. He skipped meals, barely slept, worked day and night trying to save thousands of jobs. One evening, after leaving the office, Adrian sat alone inside his parked car. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from investors. He ignored them all. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt completely defeated. Just then, someone knocked gently on his car window. He looked up. Amara. She smiled softly. He quickly stepped out. What are you doing here? She held up a small food flask. I heard you've forgotten how to eat. He laughed weakly. Samuel talks too much. He worries about you. She handed him the flask. I made your favorite. He looked surprised. My favorite. You always order jollof rice whenever you rode in my tricycle. He smiled. You remembered. I remember everything. They sat together on a nearby bench outside the office building. For a while, neither of them spoke. Adrian finally broke the silence. My company is falling apart. Amara looked at him calmly. No. He frowned. What do you mean? A company isn't a building. She pointed toward the headquarters behind them. It isn't expensive furniture. It isn't money. She looked directly into his eyes. A company is people. Adrian listened quietly. If you still have people willing to fight beside you, she smiled, then you haven't lost. Those simple words settled deep inside his heart. His father used to say almost the same thing. He realized he had been focusing so much on numbers that he had forgotten the human beings behind them. The following morning, Adrian gathered every employee inside the company auditorium. Instead of giving another speech about profits, he spoke from his heart. I know many of you are afraid. The room remained silent. So am I. Employees looked at one another. They had never heard their billionaire CEO admit fear before. But this company wasn't built by one man. He smiled. It was built by all of us. If we stand together, he paused, we will rebuild together. His words ignited something inside the workforce. Instead of resigning, employees volunteered to work overtime. Managers offered new ideas. Departments cooperated like never before. Within weeks, clients began returning. Investors regained confidence. Cole Holdings slowly recovered. One evening, Samuel smiled as he placed the latest financial report on Adrian's desk. We're back. Adrian looked at the figures. The company had survived. He smiled. It wasn't me. Samuel nodded knowingly. It was her. Adrian laughed softly. She reminded me what truly matters. That weekend, Adrian visited the hospital to check on Grace. As he entered the room, he overheard Grace speaking to Amara. I still pray for the person who paid for my surgery. So do I, Amara replied. Grace smiled. Whoever they are, they have the heart of an angel. Adrian quietly stepped back before they noticed him. He never wanted recognition. Seeing Grace alive, seeing Amara smile again, was all the gratitude he needed. But as he turned to leave the hospital corridor, he didn't notice someone standing at the far end, watching him. It was Ella. She had seen Adrian leaving Grace's hospital room. A slow, calculating smile spread across her face. So, she whispered to herself, I finally know your little secret. And in that moment, Ella began planning a scheme that could destroy Adrian and Amara's love forever. Ella Benson smiled as she watched Adrian leave the hospital. She had finally found the missing piece of the puzzle. So, she whispered, you've been hiding more than your feelings. She pulled out her phone and made a call. I need everything you can find on Amara Okafor, she said. And I mean everything. Within days, Ella had learned about Amara's small apartment, her sick mother, her brothers, and Adrian's anonymous payment for Grace's surgery. A cruel smile spread across her face. If I can't have Adrian, she murmured, neither will she. Meanwhile, life slowly returned to normal for the Okafor family. Grace was finally back home. Though still recovering, she was strong enough to walk around the house with little assistance. Every evening, laughter filled the tiny apartment again. One afternoon, Grace looked at Amara with a gentle smile. My daughter. Yes, Mama? Are you happy? Amara hesitated. I don't know. You still love him, don't you? Tears gathered in Amara's eyes. I tried not to, but I couldn't. Grace squeezed her daughter's hand. Real love doesn't disappear because life becomes difficult. Amara lowered her head. But his family will never accept me. Grace smiled. Leave that battle to God. Across the city, Adrian couldn't stop thinking about Amara either. Although Cole Holdings had recovered, something was still missing. Money, success, awards. None of them meant much without the woman who had changed his heart. Finally, he made a decision. I'm going to ask Amara to marry me. Samuel nearly dropped the file he was holding. Seriously? Adrian smiled. I've never been more serious. Samuel laughed. I was wondering how long it would take. But first, Adrian looked toward the window. I have to settle things with my mother. That evening, Adrian visited Mrs. Cole. She welcomed him with a hopeful smile. I've arranged dinner with the Benson family tomorrow. I'm not going. Her smile disappeared. Adrian, I'm in love with Amara. Mrs. Cole sighed heavily. I thought this foolishness had ended. It hasn't. I'm going to marry her. Silence filled the room. Mrs. Cole slowly stood. If you marry that woman, she paused. Don't expect my blessing. Adrian looked directly into her eyes. I'd rather build a family with love than one built on approval. Without another word, he walked away. Mrs. Cole sat down slowly. For the first time, she realized her son would not change his mind. The following weekend, Cole Holdings hosted its annual charity gala. Business leaders, celebrities, politicians, and journalists filled the magnificent ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above hundreds of elegantly dressed guests. Adrian had invited Amara despite knowing she would feel out of place. She arrived wearing a simple but beautiful navy blue gown. Her natural beauty drew quiet admiration throughout the room. As Adrian walked beside her, whispers spread among the guests. Isn't she the tricycle driver? What is she doing here? She actually came? Amara heard every word, but she kept walking with her head held high. Adrian gently reached for her hand. You look beautiful. She smiled softly. Thank you for believing in me. Before Adrian could reply, Ella stepped onto the stage with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced sweetly, before tonight's donations begin, I have something interesting to share. The room grew quiet. Adrian's smile faded. Ella looked directly at Amara. Everyone deserves to know the truth about the woman our beloved Adrian wants to marry. Large screens behind the stage suddenly lit up. Photographs appeared. Amara pushing her broken tricycle in the rain. Her tiny apartment. Her mother in the hospital. Guests gasped. Ella smiled triumphantly. This woman has been using Adrian's sympathy to climb into high society. Amara's face turned pale. She had never felt so humiliated. The ballroom filled with murmurs. Then Adrian slowly stood. He walked calmly onto the stage. He took the microphone from Ella's hand. No, he said firmly. The room fell silent. You want the truth? He looked around the ballroom. The truth is that Amara never asked me for a single naira. He turned toward the guests. She refused extra transport fare because she said she hadn't earned it. Another pause. She refused my mother's check worth millions because she wouldn't sell her dignity. People exchanged surprised glances. She worked herself to exhaustion trying to save her mother's life. His voice grew stronger. And she still found time to feed hungry children and help strangers. He looked at Ella. So tell me, who is truly rich? The ballroom erupted into applause. Ella's confident smile disappeared. Just then, Samuel hurried onto the stage carrying a folder. Sir. Adrian opened it. Inside were documents proving that Ella had bribed one of Cole Holdings' former executives to leak confidential company information, hoping the scandal would destroy Adrian's reputation and make him vulnerable. Samuel handed copies to the journalists present. Within seconds, cameras turned toward Ella. Reporters bombarded her with questions. Her face lost all color. Security quietly escorted her out of the ballroom. As silence settled once more, Mrs. Cole slowly rose from her seat. She looked at Amara, the same young woman she had once offered money to leave her son. Then she remembered the check that had been returned untouched. She remembered Adrian's unwavering love. And she realized, with deep shame, that she had judged a woman's worth by her occupation instead of her character. With tears filling her eyes, she walked toward Amara. I'm sorry, she whispered. Amara looked at her in surprise. Mrs. Cole gently took her hands. I was wrong about you. Tears rolled down Amara's cheeks. Instead of holding onto the pain, she embraced Adrian's mother. The ballroom burst into applause once again. Adrian watched the two women hug, his heart overflowing with gratitude. For the first time since he had seen a strong woman pushing a broken tricycle through the rain, it finally felt as though love had won. And he knew there was only one thing left to do. The morning sun shone brightly over Lagos as people hurried through their usual routines. Market women arranged their goods. Children walked to school. The familiar sound of tricycles filled the busy streets. Amara was preparing to begin another day of work when her phone rang. It was Adrian. Good morning, she answered with a smile. Can you meet me somewhere? She laughed softly. You sound nervous. I am. Where? The place where we first met. She immediately knew where he meant. The busy roadside where her old yellow tricycle had broken down in the rain. I'll be there, she replied. An hour later, Amara arrived. She looked around in confusion. The road was decorated with beautiful flowers stretching along the sidewalk. A small crowd had gathered. Street traders, Kiki drivers, children from the neighborhood, hospital staff who had cared for Grace, employees from Cole Holdings. Even the elderly blind man she had once helped cross the road was there, smiling warmly. David and Daniel stood beside their mother, Grace, whose health had improved remarkably. Grace wiped happy tears from her eyes. My daughter, she whispered, this is your day. Just then, a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up nearby. The door opened. Adrian stepped out wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. He looked as handsome as ever. But instead of walking straight to Amara, he smiled at someone behind him. Moments later, several workers carefully pushed Amara's old yellow tricycle into the center of the gathering. She gasped. The tricycle had been completely restored. Its bright yellow paint gleamed under the morning sun. The engine had been repaired. Every dent had been fixed. It looked brand new while still keeping the memories that made it special. Amara covered her mouth with both hands. You repaired my Kiki? Adrian smiled. No. He shook his head gently. I honored it. He walked toward the tricycle and placed one hand on it. This old tricycle brought the greatest blessing into my life. Everyone smiled. Adrian then turned toward the crowd. I've signed Billionaire contracts. I've stood before presidents. I've received awards I never imagined. He looked at Amara. But none of those moments changed my life the way one rainy afternoon did. His voice became emotional. I saw a woman pushing a broken tricycle while everyone laughed. He paused as tears formed in his eyes. She didn't complain. She didn't beg. She simply kept moving forward. He smiled. That was the day I met the strongest person I've ever known. The crowd applauded. Adrian slowly walked until he stood directly in front of Amara. He reached into his pocket, then dropped to one knee. The crowd erupted with excitement. Amara's eyes filled with tears. He opened a small velvet box. Inside was a breathtaking diamond ring. Amara Okafor. His voice trembled. You taught me that true wealth isn't measured by money. You taught me that kindness is stronger than pride. You taught me that real strength isn't found in muscles. He gently held her hand. It's found in a heart that never stops loving, never stops giving, and never gives up. Tears streamed down Amara's face. Will you marry me? The crowd held its breath. For a brief moment, Amara couldn't speak. Then she nodded repeatedly. Yes. Her voice broke with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you. Cheers erupted from every direction. People clapped. Some cried openly. Children jumped with excitement. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger before standing and pulling her into a warm embrace. The crowd celebrated as though the entire city had received good news. 3 months later, Adrian and Amara were married in a beautiful outdoor ceremony attended by family, friends, Cole Holdings employees, and many of the ordinary people whose lives Amara had touched. Mrs. Beatrice Cole welcomed Amara into the family with tears in her eyes. I almost lost the best daughter I could have asked for, she admitted. Amara hugged her warmly. We're family now. Grace smiled proudly as she watched her daughter walk down the aisle. David and Daniel stood beside Adrian as his groomsmen. There wasn't a dry eye among the guests. After their honeymoon, Adrian and Amara made an important decision. Instead of spending millions on unnecessary luxuries, they established the Strong Hearts Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping hardworking women across Nigeria. The foundation provided tricycles, vocational training, small business grants, and medical assistance to widows and struggling mothers. Whenever people asked Adrian why he chose that mission, he always smiled and gave the same answer. Because one woman driving a tricycle changed my life. Years later, people no longer remembered Amara as the muscular Kiki driver. They remembered her as the woman whose courage, honesty, humility, and kindness melted the heart of a billionaire and inspired countless others to believe that true love sees the heart, not wealth, status, or appearance. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin in mansions or luxury hotels. Sometimes they begin on a dusty Lagos road, beside an old yellow tricycle, with one act of kindness that changes two lives forever. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional story. Also, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know which country or city you're supporting us from. See you in the next story.